Good morning, friends. We have amongst us Swami Vidyanathananda. He is popularly known as Mahan Maharaj. He received his doctorate degree in mathematics from University of California, Berkeley. Soon afterwards, in 1998, he joined the Ramakrishna Mission at Chennai, Madras, and after a few years, moved to Vedanta. He was appointed to the Sarada Pit, a branch center of the Ramakrishna Mission, near Vedanta, and then in 2005 to the newly opened Ramakrishna Mission Vivekananda University. Distinguished as a monk and as a scientist, Swami Vidyanathananda was awarded the prestigious Shanti Swarup Bhatnagar Prize in 2011. He is playing an important role in developing the academic program at the Department of Mathematical Sciences in Vivekananda University. We are very lucky that he spared some time from his busy schedule to be with us. Today, he is giving us the first talk on the practical Vedanta, Swami Vidyanathananda.
Om Sahanavavatu Sahanau Punaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Dear Swamiji and dear friends, so it's been a real pleasure being here for this last few days, last couple of weeks, and I think this ashrama has something special about it, sort of calm, peaceful. It's an exceptional ashrama. So you just heard some time back, there was this Nirvana Shatakam that was of Shankara that was sung. Chidananda Rupa Shivoham Shivoham Aham Bhojanam Naiva Bhojyam Namokta. So this sort of gives to you the final conclusion of what Vedanta is supposed to be talking about. So the theme of today's and tomorrow's retreat is practical Vedanta. So before we get into the theme, let's sort of have the terms fairly clear. So which means A, what do we mean by Vedanta? B, what does the practice of Vedanta mean? So Vedanta covers a wide range of themes, topics, and so we have to select out and select in a way such that it sort of is the essence of Vedanta in some sense. And I'll sort of offer what I somehow feel is the essential part of Vedanta, and it's summarized by the Nirvana Shatakam, so it's something that all of you know. But just to clarify notions, so there are sort of three tenets, or three basic maxims that I've selected out. I'll just make the statements in Sanskrit with the translation to start off with, and then we'll sort of expand. So one basic tenet is the definition of the Atman. So it's in some sense a non-definition. It's from the Upanishads. It said Sa Esha Neti Neti Atman. So what is this Atman? It's not this, not this. That's one statement. This is about the nature of the Atman. Second, about the world. It says Sarvam Khalu Idam Brahma. So all that we see around us is divine. The third statement says, and these are sort of four Mahavakyas, so this is the third class. I selected one of them. says Aham Brahmasmi, which means I am the same as this all. So these are what are called Siddhanta Vakyas, so final resolutions, so final solutions to certain problems. When we look at these statements, we should realize that these are actually end products of inquiry conducted by a number of people. So the first thing to ask is, what is the question that these statements are answering? And so, almost tautologically, Sa esha neti neti atma, what is the nature of this atma? Not this, not this, is an answer to the question, what is my real nature? So that's the first statement, Sa esha neti neti atma, is an answer to my nature. Okay. Sarvam khalu idam brahma is an answer to what is the nature of the world. And Aham Brahmasmi is an answer to the question, what is the relation between me and the world? Okay. So these are three questions. Yeah. And these are questions which are sort of universal. What is my nature? What is the nature of this world that I see around me? And what is my relation with it? I mean, as soon as you put it in this sort of broad framework, it's something that is universal. It does not require you to subscribe to any particular religious philosophy, any particular intellectual philosophy. I mean, these are natural human questions. As soon as we become aware of ourselves as individuals and we are put in contact with the world, these are things that come up. It is pursuing these inquiries to the deepest possible extent that constitutes the practice of Vedanta. So Vedanta involves, in this broad sense, these questions, and the practice of Vedanta involves trying to find answers through every activity of ours. Okay, so now let's sort of address these questions one by one. So the question was, what is my real nature? What is the real nature of the world? And what is the real relationship between these two entities? Somehow, there's one thing common between all these questions, and it is this word, real. So real me, real world, and the real connection between these two. What does real mean? Okay. And if you sort of take these three questions or three statements and then sort of try to sort of summarize them further into one theme, then Vedanta would be construed as a pursuit of reality. So what does it mean for something to be real? So this question sort of subsumes the first three questions. What is real? And we certainly have an instinctive or common sense understanding of what real means. Right now, this microphone in front of me, this podium, pen, paper, all this is real. In the common sense understanding of the word real. But then, if we stop at that, then it will be leading a sort of a mindless existence. Right? So inquiry into reality behind the individual, behind the subject, behind the objective universe, behind the relationship between the subject and the objective universe, and trying to sort of really get at a working definition of what is real, would be constituting practice of Vedanta in day-to-day life. Okay, so let us now try to find out what is the criterion that we can devise for reality. So suppose, we are in some, so we sleep, right? And then perhaps, we dream that we are flying or something like that. We wake up. we realize that, okay, so that was a dream. And at the time of the dream, it was very real to us. Yeah. So we were flying. We didn't bother to question, is it real that we are flying? But when we wake up, we realize that, okay, no, we were flying in a dream, and that's not something that we can, in any common sense term, call real. Why do we regard our dream experiences as unreal and our waking experience as relatively real? And the reason for that is that this flying experience does not last. This gives us a hint as to trying to determine a criterion for reality. And the criterion for reality, again, so for example, suppose even in our day-to-day experience, at some point of time, even Swamiji at some point of time when he was a young kid, wanted to become a coachman. And as he grew up, that feeling left him. It was a fascination for a certain kind of life, which he took to be real when he was young. But that passed away. So even great spiritual sages have certain feelings, certain things when they are young. And that passes away. If you ask the adult Vivekananda, was it real that you wanted to be a Guru? He said, yeah, it was a passing whim. It is not something that is real today. So even in our, even in our day-to-day experience, we see that at some point of time, one wants to be something. One takes something to be of great value. Then in course of time, one feels that, oh, this is really immaterial. It's not relevant to my life. Because one has progressed to something that is more permanent. Therefore, the criterion for reality based on A, our sort of day-to-day dream experience, and B, on our own life experience where we see that certain things have fallen away from us, the criterion for reality that we can put here, at least tentatively, is what is more permanent. So permanence is a criterion by which we can decide whether something is real or something is unreal. And Vedanta, this is described in Vedanta, particularly Shankara Vedanta, as what is nitya or permanent is what is real. That which is anitya, impermanent, is unreal. So this is almost a tautological definition. What is real? It is defined to be that which is permanent. Fine. Now we have a common sense understanding of what permanent means. And there are various things that sort of we can right away see is not permanent. Excuse me. So, what is it that, suppose there is some situation that has come up, and this comes up all the time in our lives, and we feel that this is some crisis that we are going through, and it does not, sometimes one feels that there's no way one can come out of this. But if we pause to think for a moment, then one has gone through various crises or gone through various fortunate situations, both positive or negative. And no setup, emotional or physical, seems to be something that lasts for more than its usual period of longevity. Right? So whatever be the situation, in something that causes us great exaltation or something that causes us sorrow, if we pause to reflect, then we realize that this is not going to be something that's going to last throughout our lives. Gives us a capacity to deal with situations when they arise. Okay? So it's not going to be something that's permanent if we reflect, and therefore it is not real. If it is not real and I refuse to connect myself with it in any permanent way, what does it give us in turn? It gives us a capacity to withdraw ourselves emotionally from the external setup, which means it keeps the mind placid. It does not mean makes the mind inert, does not make the mind dull, as in sleep. So when we are sleeping, we don't react to some situation that is going on around us. But here, I mean, one is aware of the situation, but is also aware that the situation will pass. Yeah? So that is not permanent. But once one is aware of this impermanence of some situation or some objective reality that has come up, it is also, as soon as we withdraw from the situation psychologically, we are also sort of becoming automatically aware of something that is more permanent. Which means what? Which means that we are instinctively asserting the statement that my permanent nature, my real nature, in terms of this identity between reality and permanence, is not my identification with this situation at hand. So one is aware of it, but not involved. And you heard from this talk of Swami Vivekananda that was read out just some time back, that in the midst of intense work, this placidity, this calmness of mind, which allows oneself to be working without getting completely carried away by the stream of work, is the secret of Karma Yoga. So, most of the time, our emotions, our feelings, our thoughts are swayed by the situation that we see around us. The more we are able to remain detached, the more we sort of come closer to a nature which is not affected by situations. So therefore, this process of inquiring into the real me is not something that we do exclusively during meditation, but it is something to be done at every moment of our existence. And experts say that it is supposed to be done also in sleep, but that is far too far away. So let's put it in terms of our waking experience, which is what we in real life take to be real. And therefore, sort of trying to find the real me in the midst of all our activity. It's called Karma Yoga, which means trying to find the real I in the midst of work. This was in terms of trying to find the real me. Now, so this was the first question that I asked. So, neti neti, sayesha neti neti atma. So, which means what? Which means instinctively here in this kind of a situation that this my involvement with, emotional involvement with the situation around me is not the real me. So, this not this is an assertion that I refuse to get myself completely swayed and identified with a certain situation that is around. Next question was, what is the real nature of the world? So again, this has two aspects. So when we deal with the world, it is in terms of A, activity, B, people around us. So the kind of activity that is our workaday life, it involves everything. It involves our meditation, it involves our service, it involves everything. So these are activities we indulge in. These are means of interacting with the world. And what is our focus of attention most of the time? The object of attention that we take to be real. For most people, it is other human beings, right? So these are the things. This is primarily the focus of our attention, the cause of all our joys and woes, right? Involves other people. Question is, what is real about the work we do? Excuse me. What is real about the people we interact with? And then one realizes that, okay, suppose there is some particular job that I am doing. Most of the time, we are involved in some kind of work which gives us a means of livelihood. But is the work that we do, is the reality behind the work that we do only that it gives us a kind of livelihood? If so, then at some point of time, we will sort of feel the emptiness behind the work. So work just as a means of livelihood would not be something that is permanent. Yeah? So every time before we have food, we chant this Brahmarpana, right? And it's roughly translated as, if one sees Brahman in every action, he attains to Brahman. Which means that essentially through just not before eating food, that's an activity, surely, very important activity, but there are all kinds of other activity that we do indulge in. What is the reality behind the activity that we are indulging in? So this is a sort of a dynamic reality. So action is always in motion. Yeah? And so the question is, what is permanent behind this work? And then we realize that any work is part of a much larger system. Yeah? In a very, very common sense terms, we are right now living in a human society. There are all kinds of work that we do. Somebody works in some corporate firm, somebody is a professor somewhere, somebody is a telephone operator cleaning something. These are all activities, but it's part and parcel of a much larger human life. And if we see our action, every moment of our action, as part and parcel of this larger life, then the meaning of our activity becomes much more permanent, much deeper than just a means of earning my individual livelihood, right? So that means work itself starts attaining to a more permanent status, something that is part of a larger life, part of a more universal life. It has been going on, it will go on when I am dead. It has been there before I was born. So it's participating in this kind of... So work in its real nature is a participation in a much larger life. Now the second aspect of dealing with the real nature of the world, the objective universe, one was work. The other was dealing with people around us. So we are interacting with people, and sometimes they cause us great joy, sometimes they cause us anguish, and so on. But then, why is that so? Most of the time, this is essentially because we expect something from somebody. If we get more than that, we are overjoyed. If we get less than that, we are in anguish. On the other hand, if we start inquiring, what is the real nature of this individual that I am interacting with? Real nature not in terms of words that we have, so this Atman, Brahman, etc. These are words, but what is permanent about this individual? So it's sort of inquiry. Suppose very often people who are friends for a long time, there's some harsh words exchanged and friendship vanishes. But is this one particular conversation which has come at the culmination, after a number of years of friendship, is it permanent? We pause to ask ourselves that. and we realize that, okay, so this was a blip, okay, singular phenomenon. It is not something that has been there as a consistent kind of behavior. So this is in very practical day-to-day terms. Which means that something that has been more permanent, there has been some singularity. If we don't treat that as real, then it gives us the strength to withdraw from that situation and prevents a sort of a negative emotion from coming up. So what is the net gain? The net gain is that we keep ourselves above the situation. And again, the third part was, and the real solution to this problem comes from the third part of the thing. I mean, what is my relationship with the world? What is the relationship of the subject with the world? And the resolution that is given is a Aham Brahmasmi. So, which means the essence, what is essential about me and what is essential about the world, these are not different. So the same permanent reality underlies both my existence and the existence of the world. How does that translate into, say, relation between individuals? And you will see that when two people say that they are friends, what have they done? I mean, essentially, at some level, there is an identification, right? So, if some Martian comes here in the midst of this, and we don't know, we have no idea how that fellow reacts to certain things. You go and offer it something that you feel is a delicacy, and that fellow starts behaving very violently. Why? Because you don't know, but to him that food which you like is probably poison. Yeah. So very often we sort of superimpose our likes and dislikes on other individuals and expect them to react the way that I would react, assuming that this other person likes exactly what I like. But if we are able to identify at a more fundamental level, which means what? Which means that I have likes and dislikes, this guy also has likes and dislikes. Okay? So find out what the other person likes and then behave accordingly. This is really, so in the Ramakrishna Mission we have sort of two things. We have the motto of the Ramakrishna Mission is Atmana Mokshatam Jagati Dayaja. So this second part, so roughly it translates to the first thing will translate into contemplation, second into service. So the secret behind service is to sort of see things through the perspective of the other individual. Yeah. What would be the needs of another individual? So for example, suppose there's, this has happened very often. I think the first relief activity of the Ramakrishna Mission was conducted in Mahula, when people were suffering from famine. The person dealing with that was Swami Akhandanji, a person who had sort of gone off when he was about 21, he had gone off to the Himalayas, to Tibet, and had walked over ice, slept on ice, and so on. So, if that individual during that famine decided to give exalted spiritual advice, saying that, oh, okay, so you're suffering from famine, but it's not real. To that individual, it's very real. Okay, person is suffering from lack of food. It's very real to him at that point. So this exalted philosophy at that point of time makes absolutely no sense. In fact, it is that exalted philosophy which is unreal, and this famine is very real to that individual at that point. So this Swami Akhandanji, at that point, certainly was capable of identifying himself with the sufferings and alleviating it. Which means what? Which means the suffering or joys of other individuals around us, we are able to partake of it. Which means identify with it. If there is something that is painful, then what would we do if we were in pain? The individual would try to find a solution to it, right? So therefore, what you do is when you have people around you who you feel are not sort of happy, and since we sort of have common indices of expression of satisfaction and dissatisfaction, you'll be able to understand that. And then with that situation effectively. So what was the solution that was done? He managed to organize a certain famine relief, and that alleviated the problem. What does it involve? Therefore, this interaction with the world, what is my real nature, is that I am not essentially different from the person or persons whom I am interacting with. So for example, suppose there's a teacher in class. There are various ways one can deal with the students. A, I have this piece of knowledge and giving it. It's okay, fine. The student has, clearly the student has come because he wants to learn, and you certainly are aware of something more, and therefore you do have something to do. On the other hand, this knowledge that you have is not something that you are sort of individually privy to. It's a knowledge that is there, that is part of human knowledge. And therefore the classroom or teaching becomes a process by which the student and the teacher together are collectively involved in a certain understanding of a field of human knowledge and its advancement. Right? So the second attitude of participating in an advancement of human knowledge, it becomes a more real participation in a larger life. And this is just an instance by which one can, in one's day-to-day existence, establish a deeper connection between the individual, the subject, and the reality behind the world around us. What one is instinctively asserting is that the reality behind me and the reality behind the students in front of me in class, be it a mathematics class or a physics class, whatever, there is no essential difference between me and, so if I'm a student, between me and my teacher, and if I'm a teacher, between me and my students. Okay? So this assertion, so this is not something for which we have to sort of isolate ourselves, cut ourselves off from everybody, and sit down and interact only with the troubles of my mind and its waywardness. But it's something that we can do in day-to-day existence. So this is practice. So, again, the lecturer Swamiji, he sort of said that at the outset, that the solidarity of the universe, the oneness of the universe, is the final truth that Vedanta talks about. And that's the truth. And he mentioned that during the 4 lectures that he had given, you would elaborate on that. This is just an attempt to sort of try to see what Swamiji might have had in mind. And therefore, so Vedanta, again, if you want to take one tenet in Vedanta, it's essentially oneness. And what is the practice of it? It is proceeding through every bit of our activity, every activity that we indulge in, proceeding towards that oneness that constitutes practice.